This episode of ENVERT TV is being brought to you by the Indie Bible. The Indie Bible offers affordable music promotion for artists of all genres. For 20 years, the Indie Bible has helped independent artists with music promotion, getting radio airplay, distribution, radio promotion, and much more. The Indie Bible features the most comprehensive music business directory with over 1,500 pages, organized into 16 sections sorted by genre and geographic location, featuring radio stations, booking agencies, and more. The Indie Bible will help you to gain worldwide exposure across the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, Asia, and everywhere else, all on a limited budget. To grab the latest edition of the Indie Bible, click the link in our description below.
Did we drink a bit too much? Probably 'cause we're young, and there's a slight hesitation in wanting someone. Will you take me home? Hey, you take off my coat, and I could have predicted this months ago. Your head rests against mine, arms wrapped around my thigh. Oh, they sour like nicotine. You're not right for me, and I'm not for you. But the oxygen is leaving. Gravity closed the door to this room, and closer we move. See, I don't wanna be just anybody around you, and that's all I can do. I don't wanna be alright at the end of any end. Let me breaking at my lids. Oh, I'm lying.
Hey, what's up, music lovers? I'm Flisadam, the editor-in-chief here at ENVERT, and welcome to another special edition of ENVERT TV. As part of this episode, I had a chance to speak with singer, songwriter, and producer Leila Sunier. During our conversation, she had a chance to share how COVID-19 has impacted her as a newer artist, gender expectations in the music industry, social activism as an artist, and her upcoming EP, Where Everything is Perfect. Check out our conversation here. Okay, so first and foremost, again, thank you for taking the time out to chat with me. There are a bunch of things that I kind of want to talk to you about, and I'm just glad and excited to be talking with you. I know that the first thing I kind of want to check on you with is, like, how are you managing during this time? Like, COVID has hit so many artists in different ways. So I'm just interested to see how you're handling it. Did you have to move, or is there any big changes that you had to make?
Yeah, so when COVID kind of first hit, I had moved out to LA, like at the beginning of September. I had graduated college, and I'm like, all right, people say you should be in LA for the music industry. Like many a young folk, I made that migration. And then when it hit, like I was already having like some stress with my living situation. So I figured, like, when everything started shutting down, the best thing that I could do was just kind of go home. And I was fortunate enough to, like, my parents recently moved out, like, deep into Colorado. So I moved back there, and I started work at a grocery store. And it was kind of interesting being on that end. And I've currently got, like, a couple part-time jobs working again in the service industry, and it's very interesting on that end where you see things start to open up and like different avenues, because I was doing like online ordering and shopping, and like we had like a massive like influx and everything of people, you know, wanting their groceries delivered. So it's been interesting in that regard. And then I don't know, coming back to LA, I came back like at the beginning of June to do some recording for this new project. That's the first song is actually coming out this week, which I'm very excited about. it's been interesting seeing LA kind of like deal with it. And I know certain communities have been especially hit hard with it, others not so much. It's really interesting to see the disparity between like the east side and the west side and what's open and what's not. And just this whole summer, it's kind of quite the time, I feel like, to be just a human. Yeah, so that's, again, me stumbling through an answer.
That's the simplest way to put it. It's like back to back to back things are happening, and it's a lot to take in, and especially with some areas, like you said, people that are practicing social distancing or people that are self-quarantining, to be in an isolated environment for a prolonged amount of time, it kind of does begin to chip away at your psyche. So and kind of taking all of that in, I think that's the easiest way to kind of summarize it. Just like a sucky time to be human, period. Like there's no other way.
Yeah, and you're just like trying to, like, you know, not be too anxious, not be too depressed, not be like, oh my God. But I feel kind of lucky about like the people that I do have that are like in my life. And then also, I don't know, I don't have a very defeatist attitude. I feel like I've just got to, you know, it's like, wow, we're like in a bad place, but you can always go up, you know, like it's kind of that abyss. I think if you ever hit the bottom, you can know, well, you can't go further than that. And if you go further than that, you're like, well, at least I can go up from here, you know? Yeah. At least that's how I try and look at things.
I mean, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, I'm starting to get there. I was quite the pessimist, right? I think that's what it's called. I was quite the pessimist. So it was hard, and it took a lot of like therapy sessions, meditating, talking to friends to really get out of that mindset. And why is it that that's my go-to? So I'm happy to say that I'm much more of an optimist now. Like I can see like, oh, well, I have to sit at home, but now I get to redecorate my place. Or now I get to really take time to focus on the things that I was ignoring in the past, or maybe call up a friend, call up a family member, web chat with someone, right? So getting back to the kind of familiar and other relationship ties that we have. And I don't want to kind of dive deeper into COVID, but I did have a curiosity. And with the release of your debut EP, COVID kind of hit right after its release. So you released the EP, and in March, like around the 17th, everything was shut down. So I know it may seem like a long time to kind of think back to, but do you remember when you first kind of got the news from like venues and things that things would be shutting down, and how do you remember dealing with that at that time?
Yeah, it was kind of like a big hit. I had a lot of shows lined up for like the next month and a half. And I was like already planning and thinking about booking and, you know, trying to figure out who I could open for to just kind of garner more attention. And then that all just went away, you know? And not just like it went away in terms of exposure, it went away in terms of like revenue. And you just kind of had to be like, all right, well, this, I don't know, you had to be creative. It definitely was a depressing hit. Again, I say I went home. I feel like you don't go home because you're like, you know, and I do feel really lucky about that space. But yeah, and then looking forward to the future, like, so I had this debut EP that came out like February, March and everything, like what you're saying. I've got this new project that I'm working on, and the guy that I worked with on it, who produced it, like he's like, traditionally, you know, you'd again try and open for people, but that space doesn't exist, and it's not going to exist for a foreseeable future. So that's another weird thing to kind of take into account and figure out, all right, let's see how we can be creative. Yeah.
So let's kind of talk to something a bit more positive, right?
True. Let's go up.
let's go up. So with the release of your EP, you did receive a lot of great feedback and a lot of great reviews from it. And one of the kind of focal points of those reviews and critiques was that it was truly alternative, right? It was a blend of multiple different sounds done cohesively. So I know you spoke about kind of in passing quickly when we first started to talk about your studies in I'm assuming higher education, from what I have here in my notes, that you did actually study music theory and composition. So do you think your academic work and your researching and your ability to attend a higher education facility focused specifically on music was a great contributing factor to that sonic experience?
To answer your question, yes, absolutely. I think I'm kind of inherently a nerd. I grew up in a very academically rigorous family. All my siblings are kind of in the STEM category. And I was lucky enough to go to school for music. And I originally was doing music production and music composition. And I love the whole theory and the structure. And just the history behind different genres of music. I always thought that was really interesting. And I love like delving into like different artists' influences, not just like musical, but what they were reading, what art they were like into, films. And I think it's all kind of comes together, and you need to be open to every art form. And that's the exciting thing about just art, is that you're always kind of absorbing other people's art forms and letting it like influence your own and grow and just come off of that. It's kind of the entire history of art is very much a collaborative experience, which I think is cool to think about. And yeah.
So when you're digging for sounds, do you often reference other forms of art, whether it's visual arts or mixed medias or things like that?
Yeah. So I actually paint. I painted and drew before I talked, which is kind of funny to think about. But when I describe a song, I always use very visual qualifiers. I want people to visualize a song as in terms of a setting or a place. It's really funny to be with me when I'm directing a band, because there's a song Ghost on the last project that I will forever describe as sounding like, you know, a rainy day in the 80s, but it's a happy rainy day. And you're like, you know, it's like a calm, like nothing too aggressive, but it's rainy, but it's not quite bright. And that's exactly how I'll describe it to the people that are playing. I'll be like, play like you're in this room and you're just, you know, happy. I think if people can visualize it, because I don't know, just at least for me, that's how I work. If you can visualize it, then you can make it happen. And yeah.
So that's interesting. And you know, one of the things that I found particularly fascinating is that you do actually paint, and you just kind of spoke about that before. So is that how you're able to kind of offset your creativity when you're not recording music? Is that your other kind of addiction, if you will? Is that where you kind of use and invent when you're not in the recording mode?
Yeah, for sure. I kind of, painting to me is kind of sacred, because I think music and art and painting, I think, allow you to understand yourselves better in different ways. I think music and songwriting, or at least just the songwriting process, you can process how you feel, and you can distill a single moment in time in like, you know, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and you're like, here, this is my little abstract thesis statement. Whereas painting, I feel like you can let your mind wander more freely, and you get to understand how you feel more about bigger concepts, or about your own self-identity, or other people's. I just think each way is a better way to understand your experience. And that's kind of why I can't really go too long without them. it's kind of like a hop, skip, and about between the two. Yeah.
So speaking of kind of individuality and self-expression, you have in past interviews been very vocal on several kind of social issues, political issues, but one of which that I would love for you to kind of dive deeper in is this expectation placed on women. And in reading through your interviews in the past, I thought that was extremely well kind of thought out, and it didn't kind of hit my mind until you actually verbalize it. And the topic that you were talking about is the expectation that women artists have to face, whether it's about how they produce their projects, what they actually include as part of their influences, who they work with, who gets credit for what they do. So could you talk to that a bit more?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think especially moving to LA, it's very interesting how the brand, the idea of branding is pushed on you and how constraining that is. I find that like as an identity, women aren't really freely allowed to be both like cute and sweet and dorky, or sexy and empowered, or extremely active. You know, I feel like the way media is, it's very limiting as to what your identity can be, and it's like kind of taboo to cross over into different things. And I think it's a huge mistake and disservice, not disservice. It's a huge mistake and disservice if you limit yourself in those terms. Like, I don't know. I just think you have more to offer, and I think pop culture in general tries to force you to be in these boxes. Going off of that, I think they also really underestimate you and what you've done and what you've brought to a project. I know I got one review that I really loved from the last project, but the project was a co-production from me and my old roommate. And they completely just, disregarded any of my influence as to the actual sonic quality of the project, which was kind of weird, but also something to be expected. So those are things that are interesting, and you have to kind of know when you go into a room that people are going to underestimate you. But that's, I don't know, I guess it's their loss, right? I'm sure you can speak to that, right? Where you go into a room and people underestimate you and you're like, well, that's on you, and I'm going to be above and better than that, and you're going to be wishing that you were over here in my corner. Yeah, I don't know. That was kind of a competitive answer.
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is because we're seeing, even right now, there's this whole online debate about hypersexuality, and
Yeah.
piggybacked off of the release of Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion song WAP. And the conversation then became, oh, this is too explicit. They're setting a bad example for young women and young girls. And then the argument was kind of flipped on its head is why is it this standard that we're putting on women to be ideal citizens or role models through their music, but that same sort of censorship isn't applied to their counterparts, right? So
it's not at all. Like, you can be fucking, I don't know, the amount of gross men that are in the entertainment industry, that it's fine that they're not a role model, is ridiculous. But as a woman, you have to set an example, and you are something that it's ridiculous. It's that whole, what am I looking for? Like the classic, like, knight and then the woman on a pedestal type thing. It's that whole thing, and it comes back, and it's just honestly more toxic than anything else. Yeah.
So some other things that you've been also vocal about, and this is specifically to your social media presence, more so on Twitter. You have been very vocal about things that are happening, whether it's police brutality, the explosion in Beirut, right? So are you ever fearful? And maybe that may not be the word best suited for this question, but are you ever feel fearful of backlash that you may receive as an artist?
Yeah, I guess I'm fearful for not being sensitive and informed. Um, I try and do my research about each thing that I share. And yeah, you don't want to make a statement that isn't informed, but I want to actually share things that are important to me. And I think that's just a part of not really just being like an artist. I know I've seen some posts that say it's an artist's responsibility to share. And I think that's not, again, that's putting that's putting a group of people on a pedestal and putting an expectation as to what their role is. And I think it's for everyone to kind of learn how they want to share how they feel. Like, you don't need to, so long as you know what you believe and so long as you're doing the work behind the scenes of social media, I think that's more important than anything. But yeah, for sure, anything that I ever post, I just want to make sure that it never comes across as inauthentic or uninformed or not sensitive to what's actually happening. That was actually something that I was also considering when figuring out how to start, promoting this new project, this new single. I wanted to make sure that it didn't come across as inherently vain. I feel like narcissism in 2020 is so outdated and not something I'm really interested in. you know?
And I think that for especially a newer act to be mindful of that, and on whatever side that you fall on, right, there's going to be someone critiquing, there's going to be criticism of some sort, right? So I think being grounded in your response is very important, right? Because you never want to speak, as you're saying, to something that you know nothing of, right?
Yeah.
So that would be another kind of trigger, if you will, on a social media kind of rant of, oh, this person spoke about something and they didn't have all the facts. But then if you're, as an artist, some fans look to you for a response or commentary on what's going on. So it is walking the tightrope, if you will, of how do you speak on something and stay informed to make sure that you are showing your support for your fan base, but also making sure that you hold yourself accountable with the words you choose to use in your response to that, right?
Yeah, totally. It's a weird, tricky ground. And I think it's exactly what you said. Like, you have to just try and approach it as grounded. And hopefully the people that see it understand that you're pretty human and you're not going to have all the answers. But like what you said, people do look to certain people for guidance or a response of some sort.
With your upcoming single, Sober, can you speak about the inspiration behind the track? Did you work with anyone in particular, or was this something that you molded all on your own? You know, some people have these expectations of who you need to work with, and then you did kind of speak to that being creatively limited or not being referenced properly. So what was the inspiration behind this track?
Yeah. So Sober/Without, I wrote last summer, actually, kind of towards the beginning. I was working at a gastropub in Colorado, and as the opening line states, as I've kind of hinted, like, I'll figure it out when I'm sober, but I'm hardly sober. That was kind of the whole, I kind of look at it as like this premise, this forward to what the project was about. It was definitely a summer of vices, if you will, and just kind of navigating that, watching people struggle with it, and kind of coming out of it in a way. So there's kind of been like a concept behind not just this song, but kind of the project. And it was interesting because the last project, I didn't really have a clear thesis until more like midway. And then this one, it was just all kind of happening. And I was like, this is what it is. And then as for who I worked with, I'm really proud and excited about my team. On the production side, I worked with Alex Newport, who's a producer that I connected with back in February or March, like right before White Noise, like the last EP came out. We connected very organically on Facebook. I saw that he liked my page and I looked at his name and like, that name looks familiar. And like nerdy, geeky me, lo and behold, he had like worked on some of my favorite smaller indie projects. Especially like I was just like, oh my God, he liked my page. And so I messaged him. Well, then I friend requested him and then he confirmed. And then I like spent like some time trying to craft out a message. And then he messaged me and I was like, oh, whoa, it's happening. So we were able to actually, that's probably a really geeky way to be like, I worked with somebody whose work I really love. And he'll probably see that and he's just such a sweetheart and he'll be like, good old Leila, just a dork. We figured out how to schedule something for June, which again, that was like a large part of why I came back, because I was just really excited to work with someone who I really respected. And then it was just him and me, and then we brought in his friend Sarah to play drums, who again, absolute sweetheart. We actually apparently went to the same school. We both went to Frost School of Music. He just went 14 years before me. We were both, it's about the U, we were both UM grads. And yeah, it was a very small team. Oh, and then Carl Saffmastered, who again, I think he's based in Chicago. Really sweet, a delight to work with. And I just feel lucky that for both projects now, it's been a very small group of people that are very respectful and mindful and just about the music. And I think that's kind of important.
Yeah. That's exciting to hear. Collaborations are always fun, especially when they're for someone who you respect their work. So I am lucky that I got the teaser before it's released to the public. And I enjoyed the track. And I'm excited that you two came together for that collaboration, as well as the others that you collaborated with. Now, there's another theme that you kind of hinted at as to what your upcoming EP is about, and I have the title here, Everywhere, Everything is Perfect. And this is this notion of perfection. I know that you've said in past interviews that perfection is something that you strive for. So I'm curious to know, has perfection been a hindrance or a help with your career so far?
Ooh. I would say honestly, it's kind of more a hindrance. I think I get like overly obsessive and a little bit neurotic, and I definitely I think a lot of people in this day and age struggle with anxiety and stress and wondering if it's good enough. Even with this project, I'm so proud of it. And then one comment from one person can make me be like, oh, is it good enough? But then you have to kind of remove yourself and realize that, this is your art, and your art is, again, it's not meant to be a ubiquitous statement. It's meant to be a unique statement. And I think that's something that's easily lost sight of, like you're not trying to speak to the masses, you're trying to speak to what you know, at least that's what I believe, and what you're trying to learn and understand. Yeah, but again, the title, Where Everything's Perfect, you definitely caught on, like, it's kind of sarcastic, like morosely sarcastic, and like acknowledging it's not perfect, and that everything's kind of a mess. So yeah.
I mean, that's 2020 and kind of.
It's definitely 2020. Everything is a massive mess, and we're just like, oh dear God. And
Yeah.
just, yeah.
A headline, and it said there was a swarm of killer bees headed to the U.S., and I was just like, great, welcome to the party, join us. I mean, we've seen it, everything already, so why not killer bees?
Yeah.
So I know that the project is slated to be released in October, but I am curious if you will share or divulge with us, right? Sonically, what should we be expecting? Is there any kind of things that you're really experimenting with? Will there be any guest vocal appearances by any other artists outside of production? So do you care to share about the project?
Yeah, sure. Expect oh dear God, how we're gonna describe this. Expect synths, expect guitar. um Kind of expect to like enter into like a teenage indie dreamy lush very atmospheric vibe. I don't know. Perfume Genius, but Perfume Genius is a girl. Maybe.
So I do have two more questions and I'll let you go. I know that you're still in album mode. So is there going to be any music videos for this release, or anything special that you have planned, whether it's virtual performances or anything like that?
Yeah, I hope so. Music videos are kind of interesting right now. Just because like I feel like you wanna, I don't know. I know people are doing a lot of animation and stuff, and I kind of actually hopped on that bandwagon. There's gonna be a cute little animated lyric video that I did myself. That's probably going to come out next week, and I'm very excited about it. And then who knows? I've got some like things in the oven in terms of the rest. So hopefully everything goes according to plan.
Hey, that sounds exciting. So before I let you go, I do like to ask artists this, especially in the days of COVID, how can fans support you right
You can listen to my music. It's Leila Sunier. I have a t-shirt. This is my first piece of merch that I'm actually really proud of. It's got some art drawn by myself that people voted on, which would be the best design. And you can buy that on Bonfire, bonfire.com. They're a really cool company. They do a lot of actually for fundraising for social causes, which I think is really cool. So you can buy that, just $22, if you have $22 to spare. And yeah, just follow me, and I'm sure we'll find some way that you can just hang out.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. I am looking forward to the EP. I'm looking forward to everything that you have, like you said, baking in the oven. So again, thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and we're always here to support.
Well, thank you. This was really fun.